The bowling alley is packed on this Saturday night. The crack of pins echoes through the building, mixing with laughter and the electronic beeps of arcade games. Families fill the lanes. Teenagers crowd around the snack bar. Couples share pitchers of beer. The smell of buttered popcorn and French fries hangs in the air. It is January 23rd, 1999, and New Frontier Lanes in Tacoma, Washington, is alive with the familiar sounds of weekend joy. A 2-year-old girl stands on her tiptoes, trying to reach the pedals of a racing game called Cruisin' World. She is too small to actually play, but she loves the flashing lights and the colorful screen. Her uncle has given her some pennies to put in the machines, and she keeps trying to feed them into the slots, not understanding why they keep coming back out. She is wearing a green Tweety Bird shirt, white sweatpants, and little black and white Air Jordan sneakers. Her hair is black with a silver streak along the right side, pulled into ponytails. She carries a clear purse with a fish design, filled with her favorite Starburst candies, a Christmas gift from her grandmother. Her name is Teekah Lewis. She will turn 3 years old on the 4th of July. She is a quiet, shy child, a mama's girl who cries when strangers try to pick her up. She has been playing in this arcade for the past hour, just a few feet from where her family is bowling. Her mother has been watching her, checking on her every few minutes, making sure she is safe. But Teekah is not safe. A predator is watching her. And in the next few moments, while her mother bowls a single frame, while the crowd cheers for a strike on a nearby lane, while the world looks away for just an instant, Teekah Lewis will vanish. She will never be seen again. More than 26 years have passed since that night. More than 700 tips have been investigated. More than 300 people have been interviewed. A person of interest has been identified, interviewed, and has since died. And still, no one knows what happened to Teekah Lewis. Her mother has never stopped searching. Her family has never stopped hoping. Every year on the anniversary of her disappearance, they gather at the place where the bowling alley once stood, releasing balloons with messages for the daughter and sister who was stolen from them. This is the story of a 2-year-old girl who disappeared in the blink of an eye. This is the story of a mother who has spent decades demanding answers. This is the story of a case that remains unsolved, a predator who has never been identified, and a family that refuses to give up. This is the story of Teekah Lewis. Before we continue, drop a comment and tell us where in the world you're watching from tonight. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because tomorrow we bring you another case that will stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Teekah Lewis was born on July 4th, 1996 in Tacoma, Washington. Her birthday fell on Independence Day, and her mother would always say that Teekah came into the world ready to celebrate. She was a firecracker of a child, full of energy when she was comfortable with the people around her, though painfully shy around strangers. She was the 4th of 5 daughters born to Teresa English, who would later go by Teresa Chapiewski. Teekah's father, Robert Lewis, was not a consistent presence in her young life. He had a troubled history, in and out of problems with the law, and at the time of Teekah's disappearance, he was incarcerated at McNeil Island Correction Center, serving time for first-degree theft. He would be quickly ruled out as a suspect in his daughter's case. Teresa was raising her daughters alone, doing the best she could in a world that did not make it easy for single mothers. She lived in Tacoma, a city of about 200,000 people in Washington's Pierce County, just south of Seattle. It was a working-class town, the kind of place where neighbors looked out for each other and children played outside without fear. Teekah was multiracial, with Black, white, and Native American heritage. Her mother had Chippewa ancestry from the Turtle Mountain Band, and Teekah received medical care at Indian health practitioners in nearby Puyallup, a clinic available for Native Americans. She was treated for asthma and allergies, requiring an inhaler to manage her condition. Despite her health challenges, Teekah was a happy child. Her family described her as mature for her age, self-sufficient in ways that toddlers rarely are. But she was also deeply attached to her mother, following her everywhere, sleeping in her bed every night, clutching her favorite blanket. If Teresa had to run to the store, Teekah would cry until she returned. That little girl was a mama's girl, Teresa would later tell reporters. If I had to go to the store, she would cry. She was my everything. Teekah had a younger sister, Tamika, who was just 10 months old in January 1999. The two girls were inseparable despite the age difference. Teekah doted on her baby sister, already showing the protective instincts of an older sibling. She was a child who should have had her whole life ahead of her. Instead, she had less than 3 years. January 23rd, 1999, began like any other Saturday. Teresa's boyfriend at the time was in the military, stationed at Fort Lewis, and they had spent part of the day visiting his cousin on the base. On the way home, they stopped at Taco Bell for a quick meal. It was a cold, rainy evening, typical winter weather for the Pacific Northwest. That night, Teresa made arrangements for her children. She took her twin daughters to their godmother's house, where their god sister was their age, and they always enjoyed visiting. Then she dropped off another daughter at her uncle's house, but she decided to take her two youngest, Teekah and baby Tamika, to the bowling alley with her. They would be a handful for anyone else to look after, and Teresa figured she could keep an eye on them while she bowled. She dressed Teekah in the green Tweety Bird shirt and white sweatpants, slipped her feet into the Air Jordan sneakers that the toddler loved, and grabbed a jacket for the cold night. Teekah had recently received a clear purse with a fish design from her grandmother, and she insisted on bringing it. Teresa's uncle filled it with Starburst candies, Teekah's favorite treat. Around 8 p.m., Teresa, her boyfriend Fred Biggs, her brother, and other family members arrived at New Frontier Lanes, a 32-lane bowling alley on Center Street in South Tacoma. It was league night, and the place was packed. Families occupied nearly every lane, and the arcade near the entrance was crowded with children playing video games. The family rented lanes 7 and 8, near the center of the bowling alley. This put them close to the arcade, where Teekah immediately noticed the games and wanted to play. Her uncle gave her some pennies to put in the machines, and she happily wandered back and forth between the lanes in the arcade throughout the evening. The arcade was just a few feet from where the family was bowling, maybe 6 feet from the building's emergency exit. From the lanes, Teresa could see her daughter playing, could watch her standing on tiptoes trying to reach the steering wheel of the racing game. Every few minutes, she would check on Teekah, making sure she was still there, still safe. Onad, the bowling alley, had an off-duty Tacoma police officer working security that night. It was league night, a busy Saturday, and the management wanted extra presence to keep things running smoothly. The officer would later become one of the first responders when everything went wrong. Around 10:15 p.m., it was Teresa's turn to bowl. She turned to her boyfriend and her brother. "Make sure you watch my Teekah," she said. The last time she looked, Teekah was still at the arcade, still playing with the racing game, still just a few feet away. Teresa picked up her ball. She lined up her shot. She released the ball and watched it roll down the lane. When she turned around, Teekah was gone. The arcade was crowded. There were other children playing games, other families nearby. Surely Teekah was just hidden behind one of the machines. Playing a new game, exploring a different part of the arcade. Teresa walked toward the area where she had last seen her daughter. "Where's Teekah?" she asked her boyfriend and brother. "She's in the arcade," they said. "She's playing games." "No, she's not," Teresa replied. Her heart was already beginning to pound. "Where's my baby?" Teresa moved through the arcade, checking behind each machine, calling Teekah's name. Nothing. She checked the bathroom near the arcade, pushing open each stall door, looking in every corner. Nothing. She ran to the other end of the bowling alley, where there was another bathroom. Her sister-in-law was there with her baby. "Is Teekah in there?" Teresa asked, her voice rising with panic. "No, she didn't come with me." The search expanded rapidly. Teresa ran back through the bowling alley, searching everywhere, calling her daughter's name over and over. Her family members joined the search, spreading out through the building, checking under tables, behind counters, in every corner and crevice where a 2-year-old might hide. They checked the snack bar area. They checked behind the lanes. They checked the storage areas and employee spaces. Nothing. Someone mentioned that maybe Teekah had wandered outside. The parking lot was right there, just through the exit doors. Maybe she had followed another child outside. Maybe she was playing in the parking lot. Teresa ran outside into the cold January night, calling Teekah's name into the darkness. She checked between the parked cars. She walked up and down the rows, looking for a flash of that green Tweety Bird shirt, listening for her daughter's voice. Nothing. The minutes felt like hours. Each second that passed without finding Teekah made the knot in Teresa's stomach tighter. This was not like her daughter. Teekah was a mama's girl. She did not wander off. She did not go with strangers. She cried when people she did not know tried to pick her up. Something was very, very wrong. Teresa found the off-duty police officer working security. He was standing near the front of the building, watching the crowd. "My daughter is missing," she told him, her voice cracking. "She's 2 years old. Green Tweety Bird shirt, white sweatpants, little Jordans. She's nowhere. I searched everywhere. She's gone." The officer did not hesitate. He made an announcement over the PA system, his voice cutting through the noise of the bowling alley. "Attention, everyone. We have a missing child, a 2-year-old girl named Teekah. She's wearing a green Tweety Bird shirt and white sweatpants. If anyone has seen this child, please come to the front desk immediately." The bowling alley fell silent. Bowlers stopped mid-frame. Parents grabbed their children. Everyone looked around, searching for a little girl who matched the description. No one came forward. No one had seen her. The officer called for police backup. Within minutes, patrol cars were pulling into the parking lot, their lights flashing in the rainy darkness. Officers took up positions at all the exits. They began stopping every vehicle that tried to leave, checking trunks, looking in back seats, questioning drivers. Inside the bowling alley, the search continued. Officers went through the building room by room, checking places that had already been searched, looking for any sign of the missing girl. After they checked the ceiling panels, they checked the utility closets. They checked the spaces behind the bowling machinery. Nothing. The magnitude of what was happening began to sink in. A child had vanished from a crowded public place. She had been there one moment and gone the next. Someone had taken her. Within the hour, uniformed officers arrived at New Frontier Lanes in force. They cordoned off the entire parking lot, sealing it as a crime scene. No one was allowed to leave until their vehicle had been searched. Officers walked through the rows of cars with flashlights, looking for any sign of Teekah, any evidence that might point to what had happened. Search and rescue teams were mobilized. The Pierce County Sheriff's Department sent volunteers, some with search dogs. The dogs were given Teekah's scent from her clothing, when they began tracking through the bowling alley and out into the surrounding area. A police helicopter appeared overhead, its spotlight cutting through the night. The helicopter was equipped with thermal imaging technology, capable of detecting the body heat of a small child who might be hiding or hidden somewhere in the darkness. It circled the area for hours, scanning fields and parking lots and neighborhoods. The hours passed. Night gave way to morning. Teams of searchers spread out in a 1.5-mile radius around the bowling alley, checking every possible hiding place, every abandoned building, every patch of brush. Neighbors were woken by knocking on their doors. Had they seen anything? Had they heard anything? Did they have any information about a missing child? And still, there was no sign of Teekah Lewis. By Sunday evening, authorities announced what Teresa already knew in her heart. Teekah had not wandered off on her own. She had been taken. "We don't know the circumstances," Lieutenant Jim Howitson told the press. "She could have gotten into a car to get warm and been driven away unintentionally, or she could have been taken, but it appears she did not walk away on her own." "We are expanding our investigation beyond the search area." The search continued for days. Volunteers conducted door-to-door canvasses of the neighborhood. Investigators interviewed local sex offenders. A 24-hour tip line was established, and calls began pouring in. On January 26th, 3 days after Teekah disappeared, search dogs picked up a scent and led trackers to a brushy area across Center Street from the bowling alley. When investigators searched the area, they found a pile of men's clothing hidden under a bush. The clothes appeared to have been there recently, and the labels bore the letters IS or JS. But no one ever came forward to identify the clothing, and investigators could not connect it to Teekah's disappearance. Within the first week, investigators ruled out members of Teekah's family as suspects. Her father was incarcerated and had no opportunity to be involved. Her mother, Teresa, cooperated fully with the investigation, submitting to 2 separate polygraph tests to clear up some discrepancies in her testimony. Police had been initially skeptical of her calm demeanor, but they eventually concluded that she had nothing to do with her daughter's disappearance. "There is not any evidence the family had anything to do with it," Detective Larry Lindbergh stated. "Hana, but if not the family, then who?" And how had someone managed to take a 2-year-old from a crowded bowling alley without anyone noticing? As investigators dug deeper into the circumstances of Teekah's disappearance, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. New Frontier Lanes had been the site of multiple incidents involving children in the weeks and months before that January night. In November 1998, just 2 months before Teekah vanished, a 4-year-old boy had been sexually molested in the bathroom at New Frontier Lanes. The suspect was described as having brown curly hair and a beard. Two security guards believed they had seen the man at the bowling alley before, but they did not know his name. No arrest was ever made. A few weeks after that incident, another disturbing encounter occurred at the same bowling alley. And a white man with brown hair approached a 6-year-old boy in the arcade area. The man bent down, took the boy's hand, and claimed to be the child's father. The boy's mother saw what was happening and confronted the stranger, who was escorted from the building by security guards. But inexplicably, police were never called. The incident was not reported until after Teekah's disappearance. And then there was what happened earlier on the very day Teekah was taken. On the afternoon of January 23, 1999, at a park less than a mile from New Frontier Lanes, a man with curly brown hair approached two children and attempted to take them. The children's father saw what was happening and chased the man away. The suspect fled in a blue 1995 Pontiac Grand Am, his tires screeching as he sped off. The father did not report the incident to police. He did not think it was serious enough, or perhaps he was just relieved that his children were safe. It was not until 3 days later, after he saw news coverage of Teekah's disappearance, that he realized the encounter might be connected. He called the tip line and told investigators what he had seen. The same man, the same brown curly hair, the same pattern of approaching children, the same area of South Tacoma. And now a car, a blue Pontiac Grand Am, that matched the description of a vehicle seen speeding out of the bowling alley parking lot around the time Teekah went missing. Witnesses at New Frontier Lanes that night provided crucial details. One person reported seeing a maroon Pontiac Grand Am, possibly a late 1980s or early 1990s model, with tinted windows and a large spoiler, while speeding out of the parking lot at the same time Teekah was discovered missing. The car's dark color might have appeared different under the parking lot lights, investigators theorized. It could have been the same vehicle that fled from the park earlier that day. Another witness came forward with an even more chilling account. A mother and son at the bowling alley that night reported seeing a white male with shoulder-length brown hair and a pockmarked face walking through the building. The man was holding a little girl's hand, leading her toward one of the exits. The child matched Teekah's description. The witnesses did not intervene. They assumed the man was the girl's father. By the time they realized something was wrong, it was too late. Investigators now had a description of a potential suspect. A white male, also between 30 and 40 years old, approximately 5 feet 11 inches tall, with a husky build. He had brown, curly, or wavy hair, a thick mustache, and distinctive pockmarks on his face. On the night of Teekah's disappearance, he was wearing blue jeans and a blue checkered flannel shirt. The description matched the man who had molested the 4-year-old in the bathroom. It matched the man who had tried to lure the 6-year-old away. It matched the man who had approached children at the park earlier that same day. A predator had been hunting at New Frontier Lanes. And on January 23, 1999, he had found his victim. The witness descriptions were remarkably consistent. Multiple people had seen a man matching this description at the bowling alley that night. One witness, identified in news reports only as John, would later tell reporters that he had seen a man with a pockmarked face accompanied by a little girl at the bowling alley. The man's behavior had struck John as odd, but he had not intervened. He assumed the man was the girl's father. Another witness reported seeing 2 men near Teekah on the night she vanished. One matched the pockmarked man description. The second man was described as being in the same age range, around 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighing about 200 pounds with long black hair, dirty jeans, and a gray jacket with a sports logo. Whether this second man was involved in the abduction or merely a bystander was never determined. Investigators also focused on the vehicle. The maroon Pontiac Grand Am had been seen speeding out of the parking lot at the same time Teekah was discovered missing. A similar vehicle had been used in the attempted abduction at the park earlier that day. If police could find that car, they might be able to identify the driver. They released photographs of similar make and model vehicles, asking the public to come forward with any information about a late 1980s or early 1990s Pontiac Grand Am with tinted windows and a large spoiler. They distributed flyers throughout Pierce County. They set up tip lines and fielded hundreds of calls. But the car was never found. The driver was never identified. The man with the pockmarked face seemed to have vanished as completely as Teekah herself. There was another troubling incident that night, one that would add another layer of complexity to an already confusing case. While Teresa was frantically searching for Teekah inside the bowling alley, something strange was happening nearby. A middle-aged woman, visibly intoxicated, had been sitting at the bowling alley with three male companions. Throughout the evening, she had approached other patrons, asking to hold their babies. Her behavior was unusual, but no one had intervened. Then at some point during the chaos of the search, this woman picked up Teresa's baby Tamika, who was asleep in her car seat near the family's bowling lane. Without permission, without saying a word to anyone, she carried the 10-month-old infant outside to her car. When family members realized what had happened, they confronted the woman and demanded the baby back. The woman refused. She was belligerent and uncooperative, clutching the infant as if she had a right to take her. A struggle ensued. Eventually, the police intervened and placed the woman in a squad car. What happened next was even more disturbing. While in custody, the woman attempted suicide using a seatbelt. She was clearly in a state of mental crisis. But what had motivated her to take Tamika? Was it connected to Teekah's disappearance? Who was this woman? What was she doing at the bowling alley that night? Did she have any connection to Teekah's abduction? Had she been working with someone, or was she acting alone? Investigators looked into her background and found that her behavior that night was consistent with mental illness, not a planned kidnapping. She had been drinking heavily. She had been asking to hold other patrons' babies all evening. Her attempt to take Tamika seemed impulsive rather than premeditated. But the timing was impossible to ignore. Two children from the same family, both targeted on the same night, in the same location. Was it a coincidence, or was there a connection that investigators could not see? Decades later, Detective Julie Dyer of the Tacoma Police Department would revisit this lead. She tracked down the woman, hoping to finally get answers, hoping that after all these years, the woman might be willing to tell the truth about what happened that night. Her mental health deteriorated so bad that it is impossible to get anything from her, Dyer reported. There is no questioning her. There is no giving her a polygraph. She is that gone. The woman's mind had deteriorated to the point where she could no longer communicate coherently. Whatever she knew, whatever she might have been able to tell investigators, was locked away forever. Teresa wishes authorities had gotten to her sooner. Another potential witness, another possible suspect, lost to time and mental illness. Another door that had closed before anyone could walk through it. In the weeks and months after Teekah's disappearance, the investigation continued at full speed. Detectives received hundreds of tips, some promising, most leading nowhere. They investigated local sex offenders, compiling a list of every registered offender in Pierce County and methodically working through it. They knocked on doors, conducted interviews, and searched properties. None of the known offenders could be connected to Teekah's abduction. The FBI joined the investigation, bringing federal resources and expertise to the search. They established a mobile command post near the bowling alley, coordinating efforts between local, state, and federal agencies. They brought in behavioral analysts to create a profile of the type of person who would abduct a 2-year-old from a public place. The profile suggested an organized predator, someone who had planned the abduction, someone who had been watching and waiting for the right opportunity. There were sightings of Teekah reported across the Pacific Northwest and beyond. A girl who looked like her spotted in a grocery store in Oregon. A child matching her description, seen with a suspicious man at a rest stop along Interstate 5. A tip about a little girl living with a family in rural Washington who did not seem to belong there. Each sighting had to be investigated. Each lead had to be followed. Detectives traveled hundreds of miles, interviewed dozens of people, searched multiple properties. None of them panned out. And the Tacoma Police Department set up a dedicated tip line, staffed around the clock, to handle the volume of calls coming in. In the first few weeks alone, they received more than 500 tips. Some callers claimed to have seen Teekah after her disappearance. Others reported suspicious individuals or vehicles. Still others had theories about what had happened, some plausible, some clearly the product of active imaginations. Every tip had to be evaluated. Every lead had to be pursued. It was exhausting, painstaking work, and most of it led nowhere. But investigators knew that among all those dead ends, there might be one piece of information that would crack the case open. They could not afford to dismiss anything. Teresa was devastated. She could not sleep, could not eat, could not function normally. So the image of her daughter playing that arcade game haunted her every waking moment. She kept replaying the events of that night, wondering what she could have done differently, how she could have prevented this from happening. If only she had not let Teekah play in the arcade. If only she had kept her closer. If only she had not looked away for those few seconds. I turned my head for less than a minute, and she was gone. She would tell reporters, her voice breaking. It must have been 10 to 15 seconds that I looked away. Someone had to have been watching. The guilt was overwhelming. Teresa knew intellectually that it was not her fault, that no parent can watch their child every single second, that predators are experts at finding opportunities. But knowing it and feeling it were two different things. She blamed herself for what had happened, tortured herself with what-ifs and if-onlys. She had to break the news to her other daughters that their baby sister was not coming home. The children did not understand. How could they? They were young themselves, too young to comprehend the evil that existed in the world, too young to understand that someone had stolen their sister and might never bring her back. I said, your sister was kidnapped, Teresa recalled. They did not understand. The family tried to maintain some sense of normalcy, but it was impossible. Teekah's absence was everywhere. Her toys sat untouched. Her clothes hung in the closet. Her empty bed was a constant reminder of what had been lost. The family had been shattered, and no amount of searching or hoping could put the pieces back together. Teresa refused to give up. She made flyers with Teekah's photograph and distributed them throughout Tacoma, throughout Pierce County, throughout the entire Pacific Northwest. She stood on street corners handing them out. She taped them to telephone poles and storefronts. She left stacks of them at gas stations and grocery stores. She did television interviews appearing on local news programs to plead for anyone with information to come forward. She told Teekah's story over and over, hoping that each retelling might reach someone who had seen something, who knew something, who could help bring her daughter home. Please, she would say into the cameras, her eyes red from crying, her voice raw from talking. If you know anything about what happened to my baby, please come forward. She's just 2 years old. She needs her mommy. Please help me find her. The local media covered the case extensively in those early weeks. Teekah's face was everywhere, on television screens and newspaper front pages, on billboards and bus stops. The community rallied around the family, organizing search parties and fundraisers, offering support in any way they could. But as weeks turned into months, the coverage began to fade. Other stories took priority. The public's attention moved on to other tragedies, other crimes, other missing children. Teekah Lewis became yesterday's news, her case filed away but not forgotten, still open but no longer making headlines. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children became involved in the case, lending their expertise and resources to the search. They created age-progressed images of Teekah, using sophisticated software to show what she might look like as she grew older. The first images showed a young girl, perhaps 5 or 6 years old. Later images showed a teenager, then a young woman in her 20s. These age-progressed images were distributed nationwide, appearing on posters, on the backs of milk cartons, on electronic billboards. The hope was that someone, somewhere, might recognize Teekah, might see her face and realize that the child they knew, the girl they saw every day, was actually a missing person. Teekah's face appeared on television programs dedicated to missing children cases. Her story was featured on national news magazines, reaching millions of viewers who might have information. Tips continued to come in year after year, but none led to answers. In 2012, more than a decade after Teekah's disappearance, Tacoma police announced a $50,000 reward for information leading to her recovery or the identification of her abductor. It was a substantial sum, enough to motivate someone who might be afraid to come forward, someone who might know something but had kept silent all these years. It is our hope that someone will come forward, said police spokesman Jim Mathias. Money is a great motivator, but even the substantial reward did not produce the breakthrough investigators were hoping for. The case remained cold. The calls kept coming in, the tips kept being investigated, but Teekah remained missing. For more than 2 decades, the investigation into Teekah Lewis's disappearance seemed stalled. Over 700 tips had been received. More than 300 individuals had been interviewed. Detectives had pursued countless leads, searched multiple properties, investigated dozens of potential suspects. But there was no arrest, no definitive answers. The case had gone cold in the way that missing children cases often do. Not abandoned, never truly closed, but without active leads to pursue. A detective would be assigned to the case, would review the files, would follow up on any new tips that came in. But without a breakthrough, there was little they could do but wait. The bowling alley where Teekah had disappeared was eventually torn down. The building that had been the site of so much pain and confusion was demolished, replaced by a Home Depot store. The parking lot where police had searched every car, where helicopters had scanned with thermal imaging, where families had gathered to search for a missing child, it became just another retail parking lot. But for Teresa and her family, the memories remained. They could not drive past that location without remembering what had happened there. They could not see the Home Depot sign without thinking of the bowling alley that had once stood in its place, without thinking of the little girl who had vanished from the arcade. Then in 2020, Detective Julie Deer took over the case. She was a veteran investigator with a reputation for thoroughness, for refusing to give up on difficult cases. She was determined to bring fresh eyes to the investigation, to review every piece of evidence, to re-examine every lead that had been pursued over the years. Deer started from the beginning. She read through the original case files, thousands of pages of reports and interviews and investigative notes. She reviewed the evidence that had been collected. She studied the witness statements, looking for inconsistencies, for details that might have been overlooked, for connections that previous investigators might have missed. We did have a suspect of sorts, Deer would later reveal. It was discovered by way of looking at all the calls that came into 911 that night. Deer had gone back to the beginning, reviewing the original case files, reading through the transcripts of every call made to the emergency line on the night of January 23, 1999. Most of the calls were from concerned citizens reporting the missing child, offering tips, volunteering to help with the search. But one call stood out. One of the calls that night came from a concerned mother. Her adult son, a man in his 40s with a history of mental health issues and sexual offenses, had made strange statements about wanting to leave town. He had asked his mother if she would leave with him. The timing was suspicious, coming just hours after a child had disappeared from a nearby bowling alley. The mother was worried enough to call 911 and request a welfare check on her son. She knew his history, she knew what he was capable of, and his sudden desire to flee town on the same night a child had been abducted set off alarm bells in her mind. This was exactly the kind of call that could break a case open. A family member who suspected something, who had the courage to contact police even though it meant implicating their own flesh and blood. But in the chaos of that night, with hundreds of tips coming in, with search teams fanning out across the city, this particular call had apparently been overlooked. When Dyer pulled up a photograph of this man, her heart began to pound. He matched the description of the pockmarked man who had been seen at the bowling alley that night, the man who had been spotted walking with a little girl toward one of the exits. The same distinctive facial feature, the pockmarks, that multiple witnesses had described. Deer tracked down the man and arranged an interview. It was November 2023, nearly 25 years after Teekah had disappeared. 25 years of waiting, of wondering, of hoping for a breakthrough. And now finally there was a potential suspect sitting across from investigators. The most distinctive thing about him was that he had a pockmarked face, Dyer explained, in which I know was talked about in the initial investigation. There was somebody who was observed walking with a little girl that matched the description of Teekah. The man was now in his late 60s or early 70s. He had lived in the Tacoma area for decades. He had a documented history of sexual offenses involving children. He matched the physical description that witnesses had provided in 1999. Everything about him fit the profile of Teekah's abductor. During the interview, the man did not confess. He did not provide any information that would definitively link him to Teekah's abduction. But he also did not say anything that ruled him out. He was evasive, his answers vague and non-committal. He neither admitted involvement nor convincingly denied it. He said nothing that would have convinced us that he was a suspect or involved, Dyer reported, but he also did not say anything that ruled him out completely. Detectives planned to follow up, to dig deeper into this man's background, to see if they could find physical evidence connecting him to the crime. They wanted to examine his vehicle history to see if he had ever owned a maroon Pontiac Grand Am. They wanted to search properties he had access to in 1999 to see if there might be any trace of Teekah. They scheduled a second interview, but when they returned 2 months later, in December 2023, the man was dead. He had passed away on December 25th, 2023, Christmas Day. His death was from natural causes, not suspicious, but it was devastating for the investigation. If this man was responsible for Teekah's abduction, if he knew where she was, what had happened to her, he had taken those secrets to the grave. He is considered a person of interest in Teekah's disappearance, Dyer confirmed. The sergeant noted the man had a history of mental health issues and that there was nothing suspicious about his death. It was the cruelest of ironies. After 25 years, investigators had finally identified someone who might be responsible for Teekah's disappearance. They had interviewed him, looked him in the eye, tried to get him to tell the truth, and then he had died before they could get answers. Teresa was not informed about the person of interest until March 2025, more than a year after the man had died. She was frustrated that authorities had not told her sooner, that she had been kept in the dark while detectives pursued what might have been the most significant lead in the case. "I just want to know where she is at," Teresa said. All I have is 2 years of memories of my baby." In May 2025, a new development brought Teekah's case back into the headlines. Tacoma police received a tip related to the cold case and began excavating the backyard of a property on South Gunnison Street, less than a mile from where the bowling alley had once stood. Teresa learned about the search from media reports, not from police. She immediately called the Tacoma police chief, desperate to know if this was about her daughter. The department would not confirm or deny any connection, telling her only that they could not share information about an ongoing investigation. For 3 days, investigators dug in the backyard, searching for evidence, searching for remains. Teresa and her family camped out near the scene, waiting, hoping, dreading what they might find. On May 22, 2025, police announced the results of the search. "Today we can confirm that this particular leg of the investigation has concluded," the Tacoma Police Department stated, and, unfortunately, did not result in locating Teekah Lewis or any other evidence related to an investigation. Another dead end, another hope dashed. Teresa was relieved that her daughter's body had not been found in that backyard, but she was also frustrated. 26 years of searching and still no answers. It was a sign of relief, but we are back at square one again, she said. Where is Teekah? In February 2025, just weeks before the backyard search, someone walked into the Tacoma Police Department headquarters and claimed to be Teekah Lewis. It was not the first time this had happened. According to police, similar claims tend to surface around the anniversary of Teekah's disappearance, when annual memorials are held and media coverage increases. Over the years, these reports have come by email, phone calls, and in person. Each one is investigated individually, sometimes including DNA testing. Police did not reveal the outcome of their investigation into this latest claim. But for Teresa, each false report is another wound, another reminder that her daughter is still missing, that someone out there might know what happened, but is not coming forward. Despite the setbacks, Teresa has never stopped fighting for her daughter. She holds candlelight vigils every year on the anniversary of Teekah's disappearance. She speaks to the media whenever they will listen. She has become an advocate for families of missing children, while channeling her grief into a mission to help others. In December 2025, Teresa launched the first Hope for Teekah, Joy for Every Child toy drive, collecting new toys for children in need during the holiday season. "As the days get closer to Christmas, it gets more emotional for me," she explained, "because she should be here with us celebrating Christmas. She should not be anywhere else." Christmas was Teekah's holiday, Teresa said. She loved being around family. She loved when her grandma gave her gifts. I think every child should have that star in their eyes when they open something on Christmas morning. Teresa is now a grandmother to 16 children. Her other daughters have grown up, started families of their own, moved on with their lives as best they could. But the shadow of Teekah's disappearance hangs over all of them. They grew up without their sister, without knowing what happened to her, without closure. My mission now is to find out what happened to my daughter and help other families that are going through this, Teresa said. I would not wish this on anybody. No mother or father should have to go through what I have been through in 26 years. The new Frontier Lanes bowling alley was torn down years ago. A Home Depot now stands on the site. But every year on the anniversary of Teekah's disappearance, family members gather in the parking lot, in the place where their lives changed forever. They release balloons with messages for Teekah, hoping somehow she can hear them. Who would want to take a child away from their family? Teresa asks. It is a question that has haunted her for more than a quarter century. It is a question that still has no answer. Teekah Lewis would be 28 years old today if she is still alive. Detective Julie Deere has said that it is possible Teekah survived her abduction, that she may have been too young to remember what happened to her, that she might be living somewhere without knowing she was a kidnapped victim. It is a possibility she is still alive and does not know she was a kidnapped victim, Deere has stated. The detective clings to this hope, knowing that cases exist where abducted children have been found alive years or even decades later, living under assumed names, unaware of their true identities. But the more likely scenario, the one that investigators do not say out loud but that everyone understands, is that Teekah did not survive. She was 2 years old, small and vulnerable, and taken by a predator who had been hunting children at that bowling alley for months. The pattern of sexual offenses at New Frontier Lanes, the molestation in the bathroom, the attempted luring of the 6-year-old boy, the attempted abductions at the nearby park all pointed to a predator with escalating behavior. A man like that does not take a child to raise as his own. He takes a child for darker purposes. No physical evidence was ever found at the scene. No body has ever been recovered. No suspect has ever been charged. The case relies almost entirely on witness memories, on descriptions of a pockmarked man and a maroon Pontiac Grand Am, on tips that have led nowhere. The challenges facing investigators are substantial. When Teekah disappeared in 1999, there were no surveillance cameras at New Frontier Lanes. Well, there was no video footage of the abduction, no images of the suspect, no recording of the vehicle speeding out of the parking lot. Everything investigators know about that night comes from witness statements, from the memories of people who were there, memories that have inevitably faded and changed over the past 26 years. Physical evidence is virtually non-existent. The clothing found in the bushes across the street from the bowling alley was never connected to the case. No DNA was recovered. No fingerprints were found. The car seen fleeing the scene was never located. Without physical evidence, it is nearly impossible to build a case that would hold up in court, even if a suspect were identified. And witnesses have died. The person of interest interviewed in 2023 passed away before investigators could follow up. When the woman who tried to take Teekah has deteriorated mentally to the point where she cannot be questioned. Other potential witnesses have moved away, passed away, or simply forgotten what they saw that night. With each passing year, the chances of solving this case grow slimmer. The biggest hope with this case is that somebody ultimately will come forth and say, "Hey, I know something," Detective Deere has said, and will give us something concrete about this case that will lead us to a suspect or some evidence that we can test and bring closure to this case. The Tacoma Police Department has cataloged 147 open homicide cases and 20 missing person cases as cold cases in the city. Teekah Lewis is one of them. But unlike many cold cases, her case continues to receive attention, continues to generate tips. It continues to be actively investigated whenever new information comes in. Someone out there knows what happened to Teekah Lewis. Someone saw something that night. Someone knows who the man with the pockmarked face was, who owned that maroon Pontiac Grand Am, where Teekah was taken after she was led out of that bowling alley. Maybe it is someone who knew the person of interest who died in 2023. Maybe it is someone who worked at the bowling alley that night and noticed something suspicious. Maybe it is someone who helped dispose of evidence, who has carried the burden of that secret for more than a quarter century. Maybe it is someone who has convinced themselves that what they know is not important, not relevant, not worth reporting. But every piece of information matters. Every detail, no matter how small, one could be the key that unlocks this case. That is why investigators continue to ask, continue to plead, continue to hope that someone will finally come forward. If you have any information about Teekah Lewis's disappearance, please call Crime Stoppers of Tacoma Pierce County at 1-800-222-TIPS. That is 1-800-222-8477. Tips can also be submitted using the P3 Tips mobile app. All tips can be made anonymously, and there is a reward for information leading to the resolution of this case. Teekah Lewis, born July 4th, 1996. Disappeared January 23rd, 1999. She was 2 years old. She had black hair with a silver streak along the right side. She had brown eyes and pierced ears. She was 3 feet tall and weighed about 35 pounds. She was wearing a green Tweety Bird shirt, white sweatpants, and black and white Air Jordan sneakers. She carried a clear purse with a fish design filled with Starburst candies. She was playing a racing game in an arcade at a bowling alley. She was just a few feet from her family. She was there one moment and gone the next, taken by a stranger who had been watching her, waiting for his chance. She was a mama's girl who cried when strangers tried to pick her up. She was shy and quiet, content to stay close to her mother. She should never have gone with a stranger, but somehow in those few seconds when no one was watching, someone convinced her to leave. Someone led her away from the arcade, away from her family, away from safety. Her mother has never stopped searching. Her family has never stopped hoping. For more than 26 years, they have waited for answers that have never come. When they have marked every anniversary with candlelight vigils, releasing balloons with messages for the daughter and sister who was stolen from them. One day she will be found, or we will have answers, Teresa has said. I will never give up on her. Never. If you know something, say something. It is not too late to bring Teekah home. It is not too late to give her family the closure they have been seeking for more than a quarter century. It is not too late to finally tell the truth about what happened on that January night in 1999. Thank you for watching. If this case affected you, please share this video with others who might be able to help. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a case. Leave a comment below and tell us your thoughts about what might have happened to Teekah Lewis. And remember, in a crowded room, in a public place, or surrounded by people, a child can still disappear in seconds. Predators do not look like monsters. They look like ordinary people. They blend in, they watch, they wait, and when the moment comes, when parents look away for just an instant, they strike. Watch your children. Hold them close. Never assume they are safe, because evil does not announce itself. It waits. It watches. And when the moment comes, it strikes without warning. Until next time, stay safe and watch over your children. They are counting on you.